Thank you. We're going to seamlessly move over to Graham. The last time we met, I think, was actually in City Hall at a Community Energy London event. We haven't gone to City Hall for quite some time, and unfortunately, we won't be going there anymore because the mayor's moved from there over to East London somewhere, to the Crystal, and I'm not quite sure many of us want to head that far east, but we'll have to wait and see. But I mentioned the Redress Fund. I'm a bit ropey on it. It's not the easiest thing sometimes to understand, but I'm glad that it's EST talking about it rather than, forgive me, our colleagues at Ofgem. Can you tell us what's happened with the Redress Fund and why it provides a fillip of opportunity for community energy groups now? Over to you, Graham.
Yeah, sure. I haven't kind of PowerPointed you or anything, but I can give you an update. So, shall I do a very quick background on what Redress is? The money arises from when Ofgem investigates someone who's broken Ofgem rules. Historically, that's generally been energy companies, obviously, but actually not necessarily always energy companies. So it has been expanded out to basically anyone who is involved with energy activity and therefore, may end up falling foul of Ofgem rules. When that happens, Ofgem investigate, and there's then a settlement at the end, and the settlement can result usually in one of three things: fines, which money goes straight back to Treasury, direct compensation to households, which obviously goes straight to households, but then there can also be voluntary payments, and where an energy company says, okay, we appreciate we've done something wrong here. We'd like to make amends for that by making a voluntary payment to go to kind of good causes that support that address the kinds of problems that might have arisen because of what we've done. It's been running for quite a long time. Historically, things were kind of arranged between energy companies and then they would decide on a charity or organization that they wanted to deliver the funds through. About 4 years ago, Ofgem let a contract for someone to manage it so that there was a kind of open application process, and we were successful in that. So we've been doing that for about 4 years, and then there was a retender at the end of that contract to do it again, and we've just been able to announce that we were successful in that one. The big change, and the reason why it's particularly relevant for all of you, is that Ofgem had lots of feedback. So initially we could only fund charities, basically. It had to be registered charities. Ofgem had a lot of feedback from many different people, community. I'm quite sure some of you were quite possibly involved. Community Energy England was certainly very involved in communicating with Ofgem and kind of saying, look, we think we've got capacity to deliver on all the kinds of things that you're doing. Well done to everyone that was involved with that, because Ofgem listened and took that on in the consultation that happened before the new phase. So community energy groups can now bid in, but specifically for the funds that are for innovation and the funds that are for carbon emissions reduction. So the three kind of priorities for the scheme are supporting energy consumers in vulnerable situations. That's the headline one. And then there are these other two priorities of innovation and carbon emissions reduction. The bad news is the innovation and carbon emissions reduction get 15% of the overall budget each, so add up to 30%. But the good news is there's quite a lot of money in the pot, so it can still end up being not insignificant amounts of funds. And the other thing to say is that although community energy groups can't bid into the main funds as a lead, if you've got a friendly charity that you partner with, then you can still be part of a Redress funded project. And we have some excellent community energy groups, some of whom might be represented here tonight, who are working alongside charities and kind of, in some cases delivering advice on behalf of charities to do that. So, that is a way that if you've got a really good track record in fuel poverty, and you find it a bit frustrating that you're not able to bid in there. I think if you can find an ally who's a charity and work with them, that's still a way that you can access. The only thing to say, if you do just make sure that it would be kind of unfair of us to fund a project that was just passing the money through a charity, and so we need the right governance there, because our only contractual relationship is with the grantee, which would be the charity. So you just need to have a structure where it's a genuine partnership rather than just passing money through, because all sorts of problems could arise then, because our only relationship is someone who's not very engaged with the project. So those kind of practical things that we have to think about. So we are just about to announce a new round. We haven't opened the new round yet, so the work hasn't yet commenced. As I said, there is a considerable amount of money in the pot at the minute. The pot is the total pot is 27 million. So that would be 4 million each for carbon emissions and innovation. So a reasonable amount of money in there. We can fund capital or revenue. The kind of scope of the scheme is fairly broad. There is a focus on trying to benefit energy consumers generally. So for the innovation, you need to be able to show that this is innovation that is going to benefit energy consumers, because there's a kind of big sort of public good driver behind it. Very keen to see anything that kind of empowers energy consumers as well, and obviously promotes just transition, kind of meeting all of our aims really. So sorry, yes, the main fund is to support vulnerable energy consumers. To give you a bit of background, we can fund capital or revenue and all sorts of different things, but so far the vast majority of the projects, of the applications that we get, and therefore the projects that we fund, have been for energy advice and support programs. There is one, on the one hand, we would like to fund more capital measures, but there's a couple of challenges with that. One is, although our funds are significant for the sector, they kind of wouldn't go that far on capital measures, or at least not on kind of large capital measures, clearly. But I think the main issue is we're not allowed to fund anything that's within the scope of eco. The view is that those things should be happening through eco. And because obviously the theoretical scope of eco is huge, even if the actual work that's happening isn't huge, it makes it quite difficult to find things. But if you can find measures that are clearly outside the scope of eco, then you can fund them. But it can just be quite difficult to do that, or people have historically found it difficult to do that. We have an ongoing conversation with Ofgem about all of these things, and anyone else is welcome to talk to Ofgem about it as well. Our experience of them is that the people we deal with, even if they can't always deliver everything that we ask for. Shall I just sort of give a couple of pointers? So I guess one key thing to note is, because of the nature of where the money comes from, it's a little bit up and down. So basically, as soon as these payments are announced, we try and get the money out as quickly as possible. So we don't actually know how much money we've got in the budget for this year. We know how much is in the pot now, but obviously it depends on how many grants we give out in the next round, and then how many more payments come in. So we've tried to structure the way that we do the work around that. So two things we do. One is we try to basically put calls out regularly every quarter, assuming that there's money in the pot. That then just gives everyone a little bit more certainty of when, rather than just putting money out whenever it comes in, you've got a bit more certainty about roughly to plan ahead and think about when you want to apply. And then we also, there's a kind of registration phase. So we ask people to register first, and then before they then do an application, for two reasons. One, so that we can do basic due diligence and check that everyone that's that's coming through is genuine, and do that basic kind of financial due diligence. But also it then means that we've got a big mailing list of everyone, so we can let you know as soon as there is money available. We also try to do a little bit of just information sharing and messaging. If there are other things that we think might be relevant to people, we'll share that as well via email. Is it helpful if I give a couple of sort of very high level bits of guidance around the kinds of things that we're looking for?
That would be brilliant. Any tips about where you imagine? I'm guessing when you are thinking of bringing in community groups as well, you had some in mind, some kind of projects outside of eco that might fit. A bit of the timelines as well would be quite helpful as well, Graham.
Yep, sure. So for I suppose our guiding principle for the whole scheme is how can we get the most positive impact out of every pound, and we've tried to build that into the application and the way that we both the way that we choose and select the projects that are successful, but also the way that we then report back, because I think given that there isn't enough money in the pot to do everything it needs doing, obviously one of the things that we wanted to do is try and make sure we build up a good bank of evidence where we know how much money has gone out to projects, what's the evidence.
We're struggling we're struggling a bit with your audio, at least I am. Can people wave at me if you're struggling with the audio as well? A little bit. Yeah. Okay, not to worry.
Just say that last bit again.
Yeah, just say that last bit again, Graham. Sorry about that.
I now lost my train of thought. So, sorry. So I was talking about we try to get the maximum impact.
Zoom doesn't like you talking about money.
And apart from, I'll turn my camera off because I'm getting a little message up that's saying internet connection's unstable. I'll try turning my camera off.
Yeah, well done, Graham.
I hope that helps with bandwidth.
Yeah, perfect. Go ahead.
Yes, it's so we've built that into the application, but also our grantees, we do quite a lot of monitoring of impact with people. So we really want to understand what positive impact has happened as a result of the money. The funds for community energy groups will be able to apply to for innovation and carbon emissions reduction. We can definitely fund anything that supports domestic consumers, but we can also fund community projects. So we could fund community renewables. We haven't had very much of that come through in the past because obviously there aren't very many charities that do that kind of thing. I think one thing that we're really keen on is we will fund up to 100% of costs. However, if it's capital measures, we'll fund 100% of capital measures if there's if it's for people in fuel poverty. But we do get applications through where people kind of want 100% funded PV system on a community building, and in a lot of cases we can't really make the case to say that's the best use of that money because it's quite a lot of money for a relatively small impact. However, if somebody is saying, we've got a business model here to do this, it doesn't quite work, this level of injection of cash can help us make that business model work. And what's more, we'll be able to share that information about that, and we think that will actually help to move everything on. The more that you can justify that the project you're doing is replicable, the better. Also, we really like to see applications where people have an eye on the big picture, because we know the projects we fund are they're going to be relatively small and localized. But if you've got an application where you can say, we're trying to do this, we actually think this could be done by loads and loads of other people, the money we need is to do this, that will enable X, Y, Z, and we then think that more people can do this. So really the main reason that we don't 100% fund many of the capital projects is because it's just not very replicable. You know, it's always frustrating, isn't it, when you find a case study of a fantastic project and you go, oh, great, how can we do that? And then you find they got 100% funding from some obscure source that you can't access.
Graham, you're probably very familiar that most of the groups here, when they get support, it's usually only for a fraction of the total cost of the project. And the bread and butter of most of the groups is going out into their community and raising funding, which is what they're well versed in doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I fully appreciate. I was probably teaching all of your grandmothers to suck eggs there, because I know this audience, you're very, that's one of the things that we're quite excited about is, because of the social enterprise nature of community energy groups, does it enable us to fund a bunch of good things like that. Some of the carbon emissions fund stuff that we've funded is people kind of working on models to help bring forward deep retrofit, those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. So we've tried to keep the scope quite broad. It does have to be energy focused, so kind of the business of Ofgem. So we can't fund sort of pure transport projects or offsetting reforestation or anything like that. Obviously, it's energy projects.
Yeah, you're not going to get a lot of that in London anyway, thankfully. No. Can I ask one thing? I mean, lots of money is going through local authorities through some of the government's retrofit money.
Yes.
Can you match funding with government funding?
So theoretically, our understanding from Ofgem, and obviously you might want to seek your own legal advice on this, but our understanding from is that Ofgem's view is this isn't state aid. However, there is a we can't match fund with eco or anything that comes from energy companies, because we have a quite strict rule that we can't benefit energy companies in any way. So we have to be a bit careful about things like anything that looks like it might be free marketing for eco or anything like that.
How about LAD funding?
So we are really, really keen that where people are doing advice projects, that they are able to access the capital funding that's out there already. So yeah, we certainly want to see. I think if anybody's got worries about where's the grey area around eco referrals and what's allowable and what isn't, we're very happy to talk to people about that, because we have to comply with the rules that we have for the scheme, but the last thing we want is for people to be going and helping very vulnerable people and not being able to tell them about potentially life-changing kind of capital funds that they can get. So we'll help people find practical ways through that.
Okay, there's a question here about the way the scheme operates. Vicky Phillips, should I read out your message or do you want to jump in? I'm happy to do either. Okay, I'll read out Vicky's.
Hi,
you go ahead, Vicky.
Here. Yes, I was just asking, we're a charity, so we're a good example of what you like, a charity that's running a project with the Community Benefit Society. We couldn't do it without them because of the way you pay the money, because we couldn't fund all the costs of paying the staff up front in the way that you want. There's a really serious cash flow implication for a charity, and our trustees just wouldn't allow it. So I just wondered if there was any way of changing that, and it must make it very difficult for a lot of small charities to apply, actually. So in that way, I actually think you should open the main fund to community benefit companies and social enterprises, because they're better at getting, they're better at with money. They don't have such strict rules.
Cheers, Vicky. Graham, quick response from you.
So we have kept the rule that it's paid quarterly in arrears, partly because it keeps it helps with the whole reporting process, and it means we don't get into a situation where we're trying to reclaim large amounts of money off people if anything goes wrong with projects, and it it helps us to have the due diligence in place for the money. Having said that, we are very conscious of people's cash flow issues. I think if we're happy to talk to people on specific projects. We're not in a position where we would be able to just kind of waive the whole principle of kind of paying quarterly in arrears. But if people have got circumstances that are causing problems, we'll at least kind of lend a sympathetic ear and try and help find a way through it if we can.
Okay, so there's a human face there somewhere in the machinery that can hopefully help.
Yes.
Thank you, Vicky. I'm sure you sound like you've heard that issue come up before, Graham, but thanks for raising it, Vicky. I've had experience of exactly what you're setting out, very challenging. Alex, a quick question from you, if that's okay.
Hi, Graham. Nice to see you.
Yes, good to catch up again.
Just a comment to Vicky's point. If it really needs looking at, I know Redress want more players apart from the usual suspects of citizens' advice and groundwork to be applying, but the mechanism is a real barrier that, you know, something about quarterly, even if it was a quarter in advance, that you'd have so many more applications from a more diverse pot of people. But, you know, I'll leave that there. My question is actually, is there a trend towards wanting larger scale applications to Redress along the lines of, for example, the Pan Birmingham one, where there's partnership of sort of 3 different sort of charities and community energy actors? Or are you happy to have a breadth of projects across the board from, like, you know, the 150k from like the Crew and Habitats and Heritage partnership one, or would you prefer larger ones like the Birmingham one?
Great, good question. Quick one, Graham.
Either. And we've specifically carved, so we've got a large amount of money, so we're very happy to, you know, see larger bids. We're especially keen to see people working together, because we all know we can very easily get pushed into a situation where we're all competing for the same pots of money to deliver the same services. And I think, you know, if we can in any way promote sort of collaboration and different organizations working together positively to get the best outcome for consumers, we're keen to do that. So big projects fine, but we've always been very keen to make sure that the fund stays accessible, and so we have carved out, there's a specific separate small grants fund for sub 50k projects. But we're very happy. I think whatever level of funding you think is appropriate to deliver your project within the minimums and maximums that we have in place. So we certainly don't have we're not looking for only big projects. We're looking for a mix.
Thanks, Graham. Because time's moving on. 2 quick things. Duncan, I'll leave last word to you, but before that, Mike Smyther's just asked in the chat column, how often does Redress have application rounds? Quickie, Graham?
Quarterly.
Okay, and I think we're going to come on that timescale in a minute with Duncan's question. Duncan, I can see you put a helpful comment in the chat. Do you want to elaborate on that quickly here?
Yeah, I just put links to the website for the guidance notes and the pre-registration page on the Energy Redress website. So it'd be worth looking at that. I think there's a 4-week window once it's open. Is that right, Graham?
Yes, I mean, we try and stretch that as much as we can, but you know, we're also keen to get the money in people's hands as quickly as possible. So yeah, about 4 weeks, a little bit more if we can.
So the message, pre-register now so that you can get the sort of due diligence out of the way and go as soon as the window's open.
Yeah, that's right. And we do have a webinar coming up in a couple of weeks' time, which I've just given Duncan the details of. And we'll be doing a bunch of promotion. We're very happy to work with the kind of representative bodies of community energy groups to share the message, because, you know, we know when a new fund becomes available, there's a lot to learn. We try and be as human as we can. We've got a team of people who've got experience of delivering these kind of projects, so you will hopefully speak to a real person who speaks your language, at least to some extent, you know, rather than somebody who's just the project manager.
Okay, Duncan, thanks for that. Just one last quick question for me, Graham. If I wanted to bash anybody at Ofgem about the rules, am I wasting my time, or is this all in your hands? Did your Ofgem set out the rules of the game for you?
It's a little bit of both. So Ofgem set a framework which we then build from. But if we're making any substantial changes, we'll always discuss that with Ofgem. If you want to write to us, we're happy to look at that, and we'll also share it with Ofgem or direct to Ofgem, either really. I think, you know, we do listen to feedback. And we do regular surveys as well, and we get good responses, and we want responses from them. We can't always give people the answers they want, but we will at least listen and try and think, is there a way that we can respond positively?
Okay, we'll monitor how things go in terms of applications in conjunction with Duncan. And Duncan, I can see you wanted to say something, but I will say if we feel that it's overly onerous in a really difficult time along the lines that Peter's been talking about, we'll probably drop some kind of message.
Tell us, yeah.
Jonathan, really, I don't see why we shouldn't do that. This money has come from suppliers who've kind of failed in their duty. And if we can help fill the gaps, I don't see why we shouldn't be doing that. Duncan, very quick last word to you.
Yeah, very quick to say that CE will be lobbying Ofgem, especially in the context of the energy crisis, to open up the main fund. It'll take us a while to get that sort of lined up, but we'll be back to you on that in due course.
Okay.
The other thing to say is there are possibilities of lots of funding coming through local authorities with the European Replacement Fund, Shared Prosperity Fund, and the Levelling Up Fund. And this might be an opportunity to get a project started which can grow as part of a local authority bid to central government for capital or revenue funding under either of those two funds. It might be a chance for you to sort of prove the concept and have a growth plan for that project with central government money with your local authority.
Okay. Graham, listen, thank you very much for popping on this evening. We really hope we can get groups actively submitting applications to the fund. We'll look to handhold them wherever we can and work with colleagues at Community Energy England as well. If you've got any tips, advice, that link as well to your forthcoming webinar, please send them. We'll make sure we distribute them all round. Colleagues, please do have a look at the Redress Fund. It's an excellent thing to apply to. And Graham, thanks again for your time. Another round of applause for Graham as well. So we're getting some really great contributions this evening. And Graham, you're welcome to stay or leave as your dinner duties may otherwise calling you. But cheers again. And Graham, hopefully next time we'll see it'll be person to person at another meeting. Cheers for that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.